So welcome everybody to episode 0 of the Expression podcast. This is something that I'm super excited about. We're going to introduce you to our co-hosts. We're going to tell you why we're doing this, what we're doing, what to expect from our show coming in the future. And we'll go from there. I guess I'm just going to start saying I'm Bryan. Hi, everybody. With me is Aurora. We have Mark. We have Ryan. We're going to go into exactly why we're all doing this and all of our backgrounds and so on and so forth in just a second. But something I think that's really interesting about the word expression and why expression is so important, especially during our COVID times that we're all in right now. There's a pandemic going on. Some of us are on lockdown. Some of us aren't. A lot of us are kind of going crazy with pent up creativity that we're not really able to express and to get out there. And it's so cool with expression because everybody has their own unique story. One of the things I teach when I'm running my workshops or doing a one-on-one where somebody is, you've got to figure out who you are and what voice you're trying to have before you have to worry about all the little settings and all the other little things that go along with my world, which is photography. Being that all of our experiences are unique and where we were born and how we were raised and all these things that influence our own personal self-expression, being that that's so important, I figured a show about everybody's individual journey would be pretty awesome to hear about. So I reached out to some friends that I thought would be awesome to have on here, and they said yes, which I am stoked about. So I'm getting a little excited. This is episode 0. I'm stoked.
I think we should be excited. I was going to say we should be excited.
I think so. All right. Well, let's get into this conversation. We're going to talk. We're going to find out why we're here. Before we do that, though, I just want to remind people, if you're just watching this, click like if you're watching this. If you're watching on YouTube, maybe subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be a part of what we're doing. Make comments. Let us know what's going on. Maybe give us some suggestions of people you think are extremely creative and have learned how to get their own voices out there. Because I think everybody can learn from everybody else. And I think this show is about bringing everybody up together and not putting anybody down. So I'm really looking forward to that part of it. Mental health is real. We're going to talk something about that. I think we each have our own little causes that we'll probably dip into as we go through our journey in this podcast. But until then, let's talk to us. Let's find out what we're all up to. And I'm going to ask Aurora, actually, if you wouldn't mind starting off and maybe give us an idea of why you said yes when I came to you and asked you to do this. And I think you and I kind of started this together, though, didn't we?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So, hi, guys. My name's Aurora Robinson. I don't know if you guys can see my name on the thing, but it just says Aurora. My name's Aurora Robinson. I actually work with Bryan at Henry's. I'm the manager at the Newmarket location.
She's my boss.
Even though I haven't worked for Henry's as long, but almost as long.
Oh, pretty much as long. I mean, really.
Like a couple years.
Very close.
Okay.
I'm just old, so,
No. So yeah, I guess the reason why I said yes is we've been running, both me and Bryan have been running these live stream workshops out of the Henry's Newmarket location, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. Previous to that, I started a photo club at the Thornhill store, and I had a lot of fun with that. So I wanted to, with the new times of COVID and people being stuck at home, not being able to do stuff, I wanted to be able to be accessible to people who can't go out to a store, who can't see people in person. And I got talking with Bryan about how we could do that. And he's just like, so why don't we do live? And I'm like, yes, let's do it. And you seemed a little surprised, I think, when I said, let's just do it. But
well, there had been conversation before you were there about doing things, and it took a little bit more effort to get things rolling. And the fact that you didn't just want to do it, but you were willing to actually do them as well, was
a little different. So yeah, we did quite a few different photography workshops and video workshops together and separate in our own content and stuff. We were able to come up with some unique content that inspired us. And I have a friend who watches them consistently. She puts them on in the background. She's doing work. And she said to me, why don't you guys start a podcast? I would totally listen to that, because that's basically how I'm treating these already. So I brought that up to Bryan, and he was like, I've been wanting to start a podcast for so long. And yeah, that's why I joined. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, you also have a pretty unique story, and a story behind your expression, behind your creativity, behind what made you want to work at a Henry's and make photos and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So I can go into a little bit about that. I've had a passion for art in many different forms since I was little. Basically, my family from both sides has art kind of ingrained into it. On my mother's side, music is a huge thing. Almost everybody in my family plays a musical instrument, sings, or plays multiple of them. Christmas parties at my uncle's house, we just like jam out and sing along to songs, and he has a whole band set up in the basement. And although I'm a little nervous to do that kind of stuff, I have, you know, some really talented family members. So ever since I was little, I was brought up with that. And on my dad's side, dance and figure skating and that kind of stuff was super big in my family. My aunt actually is, for many years, she was a professional Ontario figure skater. And my dad did figure skating, and I have cousins who are in breakdancing and have toured across Canada and the world. We actually have one of them coming on as a guest in future episodes, so that's kind of cool.
That's so cool. Actually, I'm just going to stop you for a quick second. And a big reason why I think you and I both love the idea of doing this show so much is it's so diverse. We're going to have break dancers, we're going to have musicians, we're going to have photographers. So break dancer, I mean, that's awesome. And he's your cousin. Yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's different. So, I mean, ever since I was little, I was exposed to this. So I kind of, from a very, very early age, I was taught figure skating, and I was given lessons by my grandmother who loves figure skating. And it was probably almost 10 years of my life I figure skated and did full routines with groups of people or on my own, and performed in competition. And it is very expressive. It's like dancing on ice. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that, I did dance lessons, which I had a lot of fun with as well. But as I got older, I really started to connect with music. I mean, ever since early elementary school, I was in the choir, and I wanted to take music more seriously. I wanted to learn an instrument. I wanted to not just sing. I wanted to be able to express music in a different way. So I shifted my interests from figure skating and dance and went into that music field. And I had always had an interest in any piece of art, like creating paintings or drawings, but I never was good at it. So
doesn't that suck?
Yeah. I can't even draw a stick figure straight, so don't feel bad.
Me neither. I can't draw either, so you're not alone there.
Yeah. So I mean, it's great. I have two siblings who are incredibly talented with drawing and painting, but I guess I missed that bar on that. Anyway. So
I can
yeah.
relate. I can relate.
Yeah, and so we would kind of do that. And then, like I was saying, as I got older, I was pretty interested in music. I took some music lessons, and then I went into end of elementary school, early high school, and I had a friend of the family. I call him my uncle, although he isn't really blood related. He saw that I was having fun taking pictures on my dad's new camera. It was just a little brick Canon point and shoot. And he said, if you can take pictures on this, you can take pictures on anything. It was an old manual film SLR. And that's what, got me into photography. And I was sold from then on. Music is still a part of my life. It's one of the reasons why I'm with my boyfriend, and have been for over 10 years. That's how we connected. But photography kind of took over. I found a way to creatively express my artistic eye, and I had a lot of fun with the science and the chemistry behind film and photography. So yeah, that's
Well,
kind
not
of
just that. It sounds to me too like you were able to experiment with different forms of expression before finding the one way that you really enjoyed, right? Like you said, you were able to do
Yeah.
dance, you were able to do figure skating. So you were able to really like try these different forms of expression and know that you enjoyed art and know that you had a passion for it. But it wasn't until you found photography that really sparked that love. So
Yeah,
is that fair to say?
it really connected with me. Music is
Yeah.
still something that I love. I sing along to things every day, but you know, as a profession, as something that I would do day to day, photography just clicked.
It clicked.
It clicked.
Boom.
I didn't even realize I said that.
No
You're
pun
so
intended.
funny. You're so funny.
Yeah, and since that moment, I've done some pretty cool things with photography. Like I said, I started that photography Henry's Club, doing those photo walks, and I went to school for creative photography at Humber and learned like the commercial side of photography, the lighting, doing like a 3 or 5 point lighting system. I've been published in Canadian magazines and newspapers, which was really exciting when that came around. And I've displayed my art in. Did we lose my camera?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
just
lost your video feed there. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Since this is going to be mostly audio, we figured we'd just let you continue your train of thought.
That's okay. That's okay. I just saw it from the corner of my eye. Yeah, so I been published in magazines. I've been able to display my art in art galleries at Scotiabank Contact exhibits and in the Unionville area and things like that. And I've had a lot of fun with it. So yeah,
it's great for building your confidence when you can get your work out there and people can see it and get some sort of recognition that you're doing something well that way. Especially when you've done so many different things, like Ryan said. I mean, with all the different things you did before you got into photography, it's always great to get feedback. But when you start getting the feedback that you're like, we're going to hear from Mark about some of his scavenger hunt contests and so on. How when you win things, it gives you that confidence that you can just do better. By the way, when my video cut out earlier, I had to back out of the room and come back in. So I don't know if that's a trick you want to give a shot. But before you go, do we have questions for Aurora as far as her history or any of that kind of stuff?
I think my question would be, when you were in figure skating, because as you mentioned, your family has a history of it, it's a background, obviously, and you spent 10 years in figure skating. Did you love figure skating the entire time through, or was there a point where you started to fall out of love prior to when you left?
Oh, that's a good question. So yeah, I mean, when I was little, I loved it. I got pretty nervous about, because I have a little bit of a stage fright. I get a little bit nervous. So I had a little bit of that. I didn't like, when I was younger, we had so many ridiculous costumes. And there's this picture of me. I have to find it. Maybe I can pull it up for this. I got my first camera as a gift for Christmas or something. And around that time, I had had this figure skating routine where we had these bug costumes that had to go over the helmet, and it created like this big bug head. And I hated the costume. My mom wanted to get a picture of me because she thought it was so cute. And I was just running away.
Just a picture. I imagine there would have been a million pictures.
Yeah. Well, she wanted to get pictures of me, and I just grabbed the camera and I ran away. And there's this picture of me that is me holding the camera, hiding behind in this bug costume, just not wanting to get a picture of myself. And I guess that would be one of the things that I didn't like, because there's a lot of ridiculous costumes. But as I got older, I think what really got me out of it is I was doing figure skating lessons like once a week, maybe twice a week max. And my coach was saying that she wanted me to start getting into it professionally and competing, not only for like the competitions for our area, which I was skating in Bradford at the time. So she wanted me to start performing at a higher level and competing at a higher level. And as a result of that, she wanted me to skate like 3-4 times a week. So it kind of was starting to put a strain on my social life, and I couldn't really focus on music at that point. So that's why I kind of tailored out of skating and went into the music side of things. So that would be, yeah. I just knew when somebody told me they wanted me to do it professionally, they wanted me to focus the time on it, I just knew then that it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
It was a hobby that you really enjoyed, but it wasn't something that you wanted to commit any more of your time to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's good when people can come to that realization, have that self-assuredness that they know that, you know, I can do this without having to do this. I think that's super important. That was definitely an eye-opener for me, which I'll talk about later. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
We all like music. So, you know, what's your jam? What's that song that, you know, when you're trying to get stuff done and you're trying to, you know, get yourself feeling good, you're trying to make yourself feel better. What band and what song comes to mind for you that makes you say, yeah, that's my jam?
That is such a hard question. I can never pick a favorite song.
It doesn't have to be your favorite, just, you know, one that you can think of that makes you just go, oh, yeah, like Michael Jackson, Thriller. Yeah, it's awesome song. Whatever, you know. Michael Jackson, Thriller. I don't even know why I said that.
I'm learning so much about you, Bryan. I'm learning so much.
I love the Arkells. They're a Canadian band. They're from Hamilton. They're amazing. I've gone to 3 or 4 of their shows with Andrew, my boyfriend, and we just love them. I missed going last year and this year because it's been kind of a tradition. And they have this song called Leather Jacket. It was like their first big breakout song. And I love that song. Awesome. I'll listen to it up and down. But I don't know, when you said getting to work and having a work song to kind of, I don't know, get you going. One song came to mind was Taking Care of Business by Backman Turner Overdrive. That I've loved since I was little. And I know that we were talking about A Knight's Tale the other day, and that was one of my first experiences of that song, and I had a dance routine for it and everything. It was my favorite track on the CD, so I guess that could be another one. Yeah.
I mean, from all places to find out about BTO's song, it's from A Knight's Tale.
I am kind of on the younger side, so that could be why.
That's cool. All right. One last question, unless Mark, you have something to ask?
Yeah, actually, I did have a question because I think it sort of mirrors what my journey was when we get there. But when you were, obviously your uncle gave you that camera, and then you realized you had a passion for the photography. And then, of course, I snooped. I was on your website. So I have to ask, at what point did you say to yourself, okay, I want to take this from being a passion for taking pictures to then make this a career where I'm gonna do photos full time, and I'm gonna do weddings and events and portraiture for people. And were you afraid that would take some of the fun out of it?
Yeah, this is a really good question too. So definitely, I was. I'll answer the last part first. Definitely, I was afraid that it would start to take the passion out of it. It would start to take the funness out of it. As much as I love photography and want to do it all the time, I feel like there's sometimes that happens, but then you get reinvigorated with a project like what we're doing right now, and I just like love it again. And I just want to shoot all the time and do something creative like the live stream. So I guess in having that happen so many times throughout my creative process with photography, as much as it's just a part of life, I know that it's going to happen. Sometimes you're going to get demotivated for whatever reason. It could be the world, it could be whatever, but it will always go up from there. So that's the first part. The second
very
part,
well said.
Yeah.
Thank you. The second part to that question, it's kind of interesting. So When I was in high school, I was trying very hard to have the arts as like my main courses. And photography and videography were like my two top things that I wanted to do in high school. And I had this comm tech teacher who was teaching me video and video production and all sorts of different things, photography, editing, yearbook, and all that. And he got into a big conversation with us about how he was a video producer in television, and how it put such a big strain on his relationship with his wife at the time, who they had a bit of obviously a falling out, partially due to his career, and a big strain on being missing basically a big chunk of his kid's life, because it was such a big thing. And he actually gave me the suggestion to kind of, maybe go into something different than video production, at the high level. So I kind of steered my focus towards portraiture and photography in general, because I felt like it could fit within a family lifestyle. It could fit within multiple, different careers if I have something as like a backup or whatever it may be. So it just seemed to make sense. It seemed to have a little less stress, a little less strain. I could be more of a freelancer and have fun with it. So it was really him that kind of steered me towards that direction. But yeah, I would say it's about end of high school when I really had to start thinking about where I was going to school and what I was going to do with my life. That's kind of where I figured it out. Does that answer your question or questions?
Absolutely. That's some great answers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also cool to see how you kind of molded your creativity to suit what would be best suited for future longevity and income.
Yeah.
And it's like so many people will think, oh, I have to do this and I will make this make me money. Where other people will say, all right, well, I could do this and I can do this, but this is probably going to keep me happy and this is going to give me the most flexibility. And to take that route is logical. I like logic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Logic
I think we all like logic.
we do, but not
all around us. Yeah.
That's been proven lately. That's for sure. Anyway.
So if you guys don't have any more questions, should I try leaving and then?
Oh, real quick, actually, Aurora, if you notice on your screen, is the camera option red?
Oh yeah.
Click. Yeah, you might have accidentally clicked that. Yeah, that's what happened.
Oh,
I was wondering.
nice.
I think you accidentally just clicked off the camera. Yep. There we go.
Experience. I love that you're here. Thank you.
Hey, no
thank
problem.
you.
And there is one more question I have for you. So
Yes.
One of the segments that we're going to do when we have other guests on the show is we're going to find out tools of the trade. So it isn't necessarily, in our photography world, everybody does their what's in my bag videos. It's not a what's in my bag. It's, what do you use in your trade that really contributes to the trade instead of just having, hey, look at my stuff. Look at all this expensive stuff I have. Like we'll get to mine, but what do you consider to be your classic tools of the trade?
Ooh.
What's your go-to? Every shoot you go to, everything you want to shoot, there's always something that you want to bring with you. Mine is my cat, Dixie. She's right here. I'm just sorry. I'm kidding. She doesn't come anywhere. She stays at home.
The cats and the pets on the screen is just going to make me go into cuteness overload. I want to pet so much.
We're trying to lose focus. Exactly.
I know. I'm sorry. Squirrel.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I saw Mark's cat earlier when we were talking, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I didn't want to say anything, but
Nobody owns a cat.
The cat always owns you for sure.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I had a cat that passed away. It's a long story, but I have a tattoo of it right here, and
You were expressing your love for your cat through your tattoo.
Yeah, any pet really. I would be over the moon for a dog or whatever. But anyway, so getting back to my tool, I feel like lighting since I've learned how to light things, I think that's what I bring with me the most, finding a way to either modify the light or add light to a situation or even take away light from a situation. It just makes the photo just so much more different than if you were to use available light. So for me, lighting is everything. I know Bryan is probably going to say something similar. He's big on lighting too. But when I was in school for photography, I assisted and did a lot of work with Michael Cooper. He's the main photographer for the Canadian Opera Company. Cool. And one of the things he told me when I was assisting with him for a long time was, it's not what you light, it's what you don't light. And that just stuck with me forever. So for me, lighting is the most important thing. It makes you stand out from other things. So that would be my piece.
Tool of the trade. Awesome. Very cool. Thanks, Aurora. Well, everybody, Aurora Robinson, my boss and awesome person. Okay, so in the show notes, it has me going next. But since we're set up the way we are, Mark, why don't you go next?
Oh, man. Okay.
I was sitting there like, please don't call on me. Please don't call on me.
Sorry, we're out of time. We got to go. No, I guess I'm Mark Flinders, and I guess I've known Bryan since I don't know when. It seems like forever, which is a good thing. But no, I'm a freelance photographer myself, part-time. I do work full-time for Shoppers Drug Mart here in Canada. So obviously, I know we're going to be on the internet and international. So I do work for Shoppers Drug Mart full-time. I live in Thunder Bay. I moved for work. So Thunder Bay, Ontario, obviously a really, really beautiful part of the province. I had some opportunities last year to go out with a camera and explore and load myself and my wife and the puppies in the car, and off we would go and do some photo adventures. So that was fun. But yeah, so that's what I do. I used to, before I moved to Thunder Bay, and obviously before COVID had started, my wife and I did a little bit of a photography business on the side, doing weddings and portraiture for people, as well as taking pictures of just about anything that people would want us to take pictures of. So that's sort of me in a nutshell as far as who I am and what I do. Yeah.
Well, what kind of influence do you like? We're always talking about how our life history brings us to enjoy the art we like and brings us to enjoy the photos that we make. In your case, like, I know your photos for a long time because I used to run a lot of workshops and photo challenges, and you used to submit a lot of photos for our challenges. And I always looked forward to when you did, because there was always a different spin. It was always a little bit dark. It was always a little bit outside the box thinking. And to me, when I issue a challenge, which by the way, we're going to issue challenges on every episode as well, for those challenges are going to be picked by the guests, by the way, which is also very cool. But when I issue a challenge, whenever I saw yours come in, it was always like, I didn't see it from that side, or I knew Mark would take it there, or, it was always a little bit dark. So where does that side come from?
Yeah. So I think what happened to me was early in life, I had a cousin that was much older than me. And he seemed to live to scare the bejesus out of me. It was his life goal to scare me every time we were together. So there was always, whether we were at their cottage or at their house, he would shut the lights off and run out of a room and tell me that there was a monster in the room, or we would be out on his motorcycle and he would reach down and kill the fuel supply and then tell me it had died and that it was getting dark and the werewolves were going to come. So he really spawned on me what was already a very overactive imagination.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Which was not at the time. It wasn't fun for me. I had a lot of nightmares as a child, and I had a lot of things for me that were not fun as a child because of that. But then fast forward into my adult life, I've really found a passion for reading. I love Stephen King. I love Dean Koontz. I watch a lot of horror movies. Big fan of shows like Criminal Minds.
I love Criminal Minds.
See, anyway. There you go. So when a photo challenge is issued, And one of the things I like to do is I like to take the word or the phrase or whatever the challenge is, and I like to think outside the box, because if you handed me a word like egg, it would be, I would think, okay, so there's going to be a lot of people doing fried eggs or broken eggs or cracked eggs, a boiled egg. What is a different take on that egg? And then
you
I
have
just
a
sort of
woman giving birth with her legs up in the air with a baby coming out because she had an egg originally, and I mean this is Mark Flinders right here.
All right, let's not go that
Let's
extreme.
go really outside the box.
I
Exactly.
think I've read, but no, I've never done that one. But make a note.
Make a note, yeah.
No, I always just try to think outside the box and what can I do that nobody else is going to do. And the fun with it is, especially with your photo challenges, and I also do photography scavenger hunts online, which used to be with the old Google Plus, and now it's through Mighty Networks. But we do those as well. And whenever they issue a words list, it's what are people not going to shoot, and then how do I use my skill set both with actually taking a photo, and I love what you said, Aurora, and I'm going to take that to heart. What not to light when I'm taking a picture. I spend an inordinate amount of time photoshopping things out of my pictures that I didn't mean to be there. So sometimes the light is hitting in the wrong spot. And I try to think, okay, what is nobody else going to do? It needs to be so far outside the box that sometimes the box is that dot on the horizon, but it's still within the flavor of the theme, just to make it a little bit different when I'm creating that image. So that's kind of the fun part of the photography. I mean, I got into photography as a child. My dad is a photographer, and there was always a camera, and he was always taking pictures no matter where we went. So part of that creativity I credit my dad with. Like, we'd be out walking the dog while we were camping, and I'm with the dog, and I turn around and I'm talking to Dad, and he's gone, and I'm like, where's my dad? So I go back 30, 40 feet, and there's my dad lying in the mud, trying to get a better angle on a mushroom or a flower or some sort of a weird plant. I had no idea what it was, but he was always trying to get that better angle on something. So it was interesting to be from an early age spawned by that. Dad had a dark room in the house when I was a kid, so that was kind of neat. I would often stand there while in the red light while he made enlargements and things like that, and so it was neat to see.
I'm a bit curious myself. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious, when you're talking about like these early memories, is there a photo for you that stands out that you can look back on and just be extremely proud of? Like that first photo that you remember looking at and thinking, I'm actually very good at this, or just something that you were so proud of?
I'm not actually sure I've ever thought I've been very good at this. But I think back to, I think I was 11 or 12, and my dad gave me my first 35 millimeter camera, and it had a fixed focal length on it, so it wasn't a really fancy camera, but it was completely manual. And I took a couple of rolls of film off it, and I completely failed. And then so I wanted to take a photography course so I could take pictures with my dad and like my dad. So I signed up for a night school course for photography, and it was actually at Night Secondary School in Newmarket, and I walked into the class, and at no point when you're signing up for night school there's no age range on it. It's just, okay, I'm signing up for photography. So I walk into this class, and I'm like 11 or 12 years old, and I'm the only kid in the class, and it's all adults that are my age now, so 29, and so we were. I was. You
can't be 29. You got to be 25 at best. 25 at best.
Greg gives it away. So what happened was the teacher sort of pushed back a little bit at first. Like, can't have a kid, and I'm like, no, I want to learn. I have my camera. I'm here to learn, and I want to take pictures. So they allowed me to stay in the class, and my dad and I went out taking pictures. For all my, because it was assignments. We photo challenge now, but there were assignments, and we had to take pictures and then develop the film. And I remember, actually, Brian, you would probably even know the spots that I was, because we've done photo shoots there. We were at Fairy Lake, my dad and I taking pictures of trees and the railroad tracks to show perspective and things like that. And I remember getting that first crop of pictures for those assignments and looking at my perspective picture of the railway tracks disappearing into the distance, or the tree. I believe it was a tree on Queen Street, and I think it's even still there. It's this huge oak tree that I took pictures of. It was in the fall, and it was just a light with color. And those are those pictures that sort of kept me creating and kept me doing my thing. Now, for a lot of years, I did fall out of photography. With the teenage years, it sort of wasn't cool and whatnot. And but I always had a camera, and then I started wanting cameras that it didn't matter if it got damaged or stolen, whether you were out diving with a bunch of guys and it got knocked into the lake on a dive boat or something like that. It wouldn't matter. So I went through a lot of a phase like that, and then I really started to get into higher end photography and better cameras. I'm going to say probably 2002, 2003, when I got my first DSLR, or maybe it was my first digital camera. At that point, I'm trying to even think what the timeline was, but that's when I really started getting into it and enjoying the pictures, and then wanting to take pictures like I'd seen, but couldn't do it. I couldn't pull it off. I didn't have the skill set to take a picture of a car going by at night and having the light trails, or even a building at night with the lights. They never turned out. So I started taking more and more courses to learn how to do that. So I took photography at Georgian College to learn how to take all those pictures and to learn how to use a lot of those tools.
Love it.
Yeah.
I've interviewed you in the past. We did a show that never really happened, never aired, called The Frame. It was a miserable experience on my end because I had a studio, I had all the resources, I had everything possible, and all the audio track and entire one half of the video tracks just went missing. Either stuff was formatted or what. And I had all this great footage of interview with you talking about your Mississauga Lighthouse on Manitoulin Island photo, how it changed your photography, and I just never was able to do anything about it. It's so frustrating. So I'm really happy that you're doing this with me now, so that we can get how good you are out there to everybody, because both you and Aurora, as far as photography goes, I mean, the skill sets are fantastic, and I'm so thankful that you're both doing this with me here.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite. It was when you asked me to do it, I was like, really? You want me? But it was neat. I mean, I really wanted to do it. When you asked me, I didn't have to think about it long. And normally with a decision like this, where I'm committing my time to something, I would pass it by my wife first to make sure that she was okay with it. And I went out there and I jumped on it and said yes before I asked my wife.
Oh, that's trouble. That is trouble.
It could have been, but my wife is also very much my creative muse. So a lot of times when we're doing those scavenger hunts, or we have done some work professionally doing portraiture and weddings, and Chris is always with me, and she's always my muse and helping me with posing and that, because Chris is also an artist herself. So she's got a really great eye for it, and quite often when we're somewhere, she's like, "Oh, get a picture of that," and I'll take a picture, and she'll look at the back of the camera, and go, "No, I angle it like this and from here." And so I've done a lot of learning from Chris as well. Awesome. on how compositions and all that stuff too. You
guys are a great team. I remember when we were doing the photo shoot at wrestling, and you guys were both there. She was sitting in the audience, being my audience for a lot of it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was the day the SB600 died. That was fun.
Yes, took a dive right off the mat. Yeah, Ryan, you'd get a kick out of this. Yeah,
took one for the team.
Flash was mounted on the ring, and I had the wrestlers jumping into the ring, and of course that impact. You've seen the rings bouncing around.
Yep.
Pitch the Flash.
If you remember, you told me this story when we did our interview, because that was the story I remember. You never held it against the wrestler. It was one of those. It was a freak accident.
No, that was.
Is that a different story?
That's a different one. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This one actually, you had it duct taped to the side of the ring, and I can't remember which way it was shooting, but one of the wrestlers had done one of the moves where he threw somebody into the ropes, and the other wrestler came back and his heel hit it backwards and launched it, and it flew. I'm going to say 25 feet it went and it landed to never work again.
But you have to admit, I gave you a flash right there on the spot to replace it.
Yeah,
so.
and I have that flash still. I use it not every day, but I use it every time I'm using off-camera flash. I use that flash. It still works great.
The perks of owning 9 flashes.
Yeah. I think I've got 5 now. So
they're like rabbits. They just accumulate, multiply.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of gear, tools of the trade. What's your tools of the trade?
Yeah, we're out of time. I gotta know. I don't know that I really have a tool that I take with me every time. I mean, I think it's I'm gonna be cliche and say creativity. It has to be the creativity, because if you're not creating something that somebody else didn't do, if you can't take a different angle on something or whatever. I mean, I remember probably one of the first photography courses I ever took is I mean, at the time I was just a kid, so I was probably 5 feet tall. But the world is not 5 feet tall. The world is taller and the world is shorter. So sometimes when you're taking a picture, you have to look at it from that perspective. So like now I'm just over 6 feet tall. So if I were to take a picture of one of my dogs and I take it from 6 feet up, I'm looking down on the dog, and it's a very uninspired photo and a weird angle. But if you were to get down on the dog's level, which is tough because then you're down there like, oh my God, he's on the floor, I have to play with him. So they come running. So that becomes tough in itself. But to take a picture of whether it's a child or a dog or a car or something like that from a different angle and look at it from a way that other people aren't. And the cues from my dad as well. I mean, I remember being at a car show here in Thunder Bay before I lived here, taking picture of this Nova, and it was there was a puddle by the Nova, and it was like this brown, muddy old puddle, just like the grossest thing you'd ever want to even think about taking a picture of. And I'm down there and I'm taking a picture across the puddle of this Nova, and everybody's walking by me going, what is this guy doing? Like I'm literally lying on my belly on the ground in this parking lot. And the finished picture is amazing because you can't see that the puddle is brown, but what you can see is the reflection of the Nova in the water. And then
perspective. It's all about perspective.
So it gave me the angle and the perspective, and that was for I did that one for one of the scavenger hunts. And I think the word was dream that they'd given us for that one. So it's like a dream car. It was a Nova with like big fat tires on it and a big blower sticking out of the hood. And I photoshopped the license plate to say Nightmare instead of the actual license plate that was on the car. So it was sort of my take on dream. So that was interesting. So sometimes my ideas are so out of the box. I don't get any recognition for them really when I do the scavenger hunts, but I have fun creating them. So
yeah, but knowing you the way I do, for your tool of the trade to be creativity is absolutely perfect, because everything I know about you is bringing a different twist to something.
Yeah.
So I think that's excellent. That's not cliche at all. It's accurate.
Yeah. And then I can also be a jerk too, because people sometimes they'll see my photography and they'll be, oh, how did you take that picture? What did you take it with? And it doesn't really matter what the camera was, as long as you were creative about it and you took that picture. So I just, it's sort of like the chef thing. Oh my, your camera really takes great pictures. What kind of camera do you use? So I remember one day I was getting some enlargements made in a local retailer, and this woman was oohing and awing about my pictures and how great my camera must be and what camera did you take. And at the time my cell phone was a Samsung S4, so I said, I used the Samsung S4 for that picture. I didn't, but it was
proves the point.
I was in a bit of a
exactly.
I was in a bit of a jerky mood, and I could have taken that picture with the S4, but I couldn't have blown it to 11 by 14 or whatever I was blowing it up to.
It always makes me laugh when I see people post photos on Facebook and they're bragging, D500, this lens and this lens. People didn't ask. Like, why share all that?
Yeah.
So just real quick, do you guys find that if somebody brags about the type of camera they're using, does it detract from, not like, if there's a difference between, I think, being proud of the camera that you have and bragging about the equipment that you're using and giving the camera more credit? Do you find that that's not photography? In your perspective, like if somebody thinks it's the camera taking the picture and not the photographer, or is it a fine line? Is it a really fine line?
I have my opinion. I'll let you guys answer first.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it seems like I'm touching a nerve here. I like this.
You know what?
It's a good question.
I think when I was taking those photography courses, and I remember when I first started going to Georgian College, the instructor, One of the questions that somebody in the class asked, because I mean, I was there with a DSLR and there's a lot of DSLRs, but then there was point and shoots in the room and things like that. And one of the questions in the first class was, what is the best camera? And the instructor actually answered, whichever one you'll take with you. Yep. Because I have a bunch of cameras, within reach here. But if I don't have one with me, and quite often when I'm working, all I've got is a phone. So to capture that memory, to take a camera with you, as long as you have one, that's the best camera to have. But there are people in any hobby or any profession that they'll use it as an example or an excuse, I should say, to talk about the equipment they have and what they've got, and whether it be a camera or a car or a computer, or a chef with a certain type of knife. It doesn't matter. You've always got those ones that'll talk up the equipment that they use and say that it's the best one, and that's why I use it, and that's why I get the results. But
you can substitute camera for anything, basically. Yeah,
absolutely. And some of those people just want to say, "Hey, look at me! I spent the money on the equipment." Whereas for me, every time I've upgraded because that upgrade will serve a purpose.
There's a benefit to it.
Yeah, like I've got I don't know, how old is a Nikon D70S, Brian? It's or Aurora. It's
14, 15 years old.
14 years old. I've got a Nikon D70S that sees only infrared light, and I get some fantastic pictures off it. But it's not the quality of the camera; it's how I use it and how I learn to use it. So that's what it's. There's Brian's D70S right there.
Right there. Converted to infrared,
Herschel.
just like Mark.
That one's Herschel. His name is Herschel. Mine is called Sir William.
Love it.
But that's what I think it is. There's always going to be people that will talk about the equipment they have and how much money they've spent on it. And it's not to say that they're not a good photographer to do that with, but it's something that I've never really felt that I need to talk about as far as the value of the equipment that I'm shooting with, because sometimes I am shooting with an iPhone, or I'm shooting with a point and shoot camera. I've got a few of those, and sometimes that's the camera you can have with you. So that's what I like.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Aurora?
Yeah, so I come from a very similar thought process where it's not the camera that you're using, it's how you use it and what tools you use, like what lens, what lighting, whatever it may be. I can make an amazing photo on a point and shoot film camera. I can do the same thing on a point and shoot or a DSLR or whatever it may be. I think what's most important is like what you're using it for. So like today I'm using the Z6 I borrowed from the store, but I figured it was better than my own DSLR for the streaming, right? So it does make sense to use the most updated stuff if you need it or if you can afford it, for some people. But for me, I think it's more about how you use it and what lenses and what lighting you choose and what perspective and angle to put a creative spin on the photo. Not to put down people who are the type of people who always get the newest, the best thing. I mean, there's great photographers out there and great videographers out there who do that, who buy the best gear all the time, and they put it to the test. And I would never want to put those people down. But for me, that's just the way it is.
But owning that gear, you think, doesn't necessarily, like if I were to go out and buy the most expensive camera in the world right now, that wouldn't necessarily mean that I would produce a good photo.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's, working at Henry's, we see that question all the time. What's the best camera? What's the best one for the cheapest amount of money? And it's hard to answer that question because it's more about, actually knowing how to use it and how to take the camera to its full advantages. Right?
Well, before we get into Brian's answer there too, considering we all work in the retail environment, I feel like that's something that applies to anything, right? Any retail environment, somebody comes into and says, what's the best blank? And again, as Mark said, you could substitute these for any different product, and it's, unless you know how to use it properly, it doesn't matter. I could give you the greatest phone in the world. You could sell them the greatest camera in the world. It's not going to make a difference unless you know how to properly use it.
Yeah.
I think we're going to find this out about a lot of people that we talk to on the show. And I think that's one thing I'm super excited about is that we're going to learn how people's creativity and the way they use their voice will supersede any equipment they use. And I think that's one of the bigger takeaways that I hope people take away from what we're talking about. Aurora says not to offend people who've had expensive gear, and that's exactly true. We're not trying to offend. We're just trying to say that with some creativity and with learning what your personal voice can bring to the table, you don't necessarily need the most expensive stuff. I mean, in photography, people have been making award-winning photos for more than 170 years. This camera here is a 1928 Voigtlander. Takes the same quality photo today as the day it was built. I could go and take a photo with this and get it developed and have prints that I can make wall size if I wanted to. So it's not necessarily the latest and greatest. However, I am a seller. That's what I do. I sell cameras. So like Aurora says, we have customers coming in all the time saying, what's the best camera? And the minute I hear that question, I think there's a red flag. Like they're coming just to steal a camera. That's the first thing I think. What's their best camera? Okay, so you want us to pay with a stolen credit card, do you?
You got your hand on the button there, yeah.
Exactly. But realistically, from year to year, I mean, I've been at Henry's now 15 years. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. I'm just kind of quickly answering the question. I've seen a progression of technology, and computers make certain things better. They make focusing better. They make high ISO better. The technology has improved certain things. They've added video to DSLR. They've done all kinds of cool things. So when there's something that really is a benefit to your professional or hobby world in art, in photography, or in anything, that's the reason to buy a product. Not just because it's the newer, not because you've got gas, gear acquisition syndrome, and you just want to go and buy stuff. By all means, the economy needs that. And I'm more than happy to be that guy to help you through that. But at the same time, if you're coming in and you're asking what's the best camera, I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. I'm going to find out what you shoot, what your personal influences are, what you plan on doing in the long term. Are you printing? I need to know these things so I can say, yes, you need to spend $5,000, or no, this $500 camera will do just as well for you. So that would be my answer. Yeah. Gear matters. Absolutely. But it's all about the story and it's less about the tech.
100%. It's one of those answers where I think asking the question, I knew the answer going into it, but hearing that confirmation, especially across the board, just it goes to show that no matter who you are, you could spend the money, but unless you have the knowledge, it won't make any difference.
As long as you buy Nikon, you're right. Absolutely.
Not a sponsor unless they want to be. Yeah.
I'm joking. I didn't wear my Nikon shirt. It's not about that.
I feel like I should have a Nikon shirt. I own enough of their gear. I don't know why I don't.
One of my customers, actually, Mike, Aurora knows Mike with the broken lens. He gave me this really cool Nikon shirt. So I'm not sponsored, but I like my Nikon stuff. It works for me. Mark, you said in your notes that you've used Canon and other brands of point and shoots, and I love Panasonic point and shoots, and I love Fuji cameras are fantastic. I love those, and there's a lot of other cameras that I really respect for what they do. They just don't speak my language, so. That's that. But Ryan, we want to talk about you. But before I do that, I just wanted to finish up with Mark. Your jam. What's your jam?
Heavy. I like it heavy. Right now I'm listening to a lot of Hailstorm. There's a guy from Norway called Leo Morcioli, runs Frog Leap Studios, and he does heavy metal covers.
You sent me some of these.
Yeah, he does heavy metal covers of everyday songs. Like his version of Adele's Hello is amazing. Uptown Funk he did a heavy metal version of. So I like it heavy. I like heavy music. I'm always listening to the radio in the car, and I like it heavy and I like it loud.
I'm into that.
Awesome. All right, thank you very much, Ryan. Guess what?
Yeah, it's my turn.
It's your turn. It's your turn. Now you didn't fill out.
To hear something not about photography.
Exactly. You didn't fill out any notes. I have no idea what to expect. I know a bit about your personal history. I don't know how far you want to go into it. As far as I'm concerned, everything is on the table because this is all about healing and help and healthy and being creative and fun and expressive. And you've got some awesome stories to tell.
So before you start, though, I just want to throw a little projection out there. I have a guess that I think you collect pop vinyl figures. I'm not sure why, though. I guess that.
It's an odd guess. I'm kind of off put that you would say that, but you're right. You are right. I don't know where you came up with that. I mean, it's really just thrown me off here. But
okay, for those of you only listening to the audio, the wall behind Ryan is in all that stuff. So
it's all pop vinyl. Yeah,
yeah,
very
just
cool.
a wall of Funko behind me here.
What do you have? Like, what do you collect from that?
So this wall of Funkos,
Yeah.
again, there's multiple walls of Funko in my house, apparently. This wall of Funkos is all my wrestling stuff, because outside of this new podcast, I also host a wrestling podcast. So that's kind of the set that I use for my wrestling podcast. Alternatively, I do also collect a ton of ridiculous movie pop figures and whatever else that I think is funny. So I've got the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation set, Super Troopers.
I saw that. I wanted it. Oh, yeah, National Lampoon.
There's so many good ones. That it started as buying one. I bought a Star Wars pop when the Force Awakens came out. Now I own 200 of them, and it's an issue. It's a real issue, and thankfully I met my wife, and it stopped, and I've just got walls now. The walls are continuously being built. So yeah, it's a bit of a crazy story, because obviously, as Aurora and Bryan mentioned, I'm not into photography. I've never been someone who's great at photography in any way, but I've always been into art, into music especially. I've always loved music, but I'm not musically talented in any way.
But you express yourself. You are an expressive guy. And one of the things that I was so impressed with when we were doing the interviews and the VIPs at Barry Wrestling, and I was watching you talk to people and hearing you do things on your social media and hearing your Knights of the Squared Circle podcast, you have great questions, and you've already proven that tonight in our conversation. You are listening, you are active, and you are able to come across in a way that people can hear you, understand you, and you're respectful. And that's such a rare talent, to be expressive and to get your creative juices off by interviewing people and bringing out better things from other people. And that's what I've seen.
No, I really appreciate you saying that, because it's definitely one of those things where growing up, I think everybody, especially in today's world with social media and all the things going on, we live in a changing world where it's hard to know how to act. I think a lot of people get confused as to how to present themselves. And I'm very fortunate that I had phenomenal parents growing up that always, taught me respect, taught me how to present myself to other people. And I never wanted to be like, again, don't get me wrong, I could definitely swear like the rest of them. I could be a mean SOB, but at the end of the day, that doesn't get me anywhere. That's not going to help me accomplish anything. And that doesn't appeal to anybody, at least not the people that I want to appeal to. I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to relate to people and have them relate to me. So being mean, being angry, and being this wild character isn't going to help me accomplish that. Whereas being someone that can actually relate to others, as you mentioned, listen to these stories and try to understand people better. To me, that's what I want out of my life. It makes me enjoy things a lot more when I can look at other people, hear their stories, and relate them to my own. So, and that's, again, why I really appreciate you giving us this platform to come on here and listen to these other people and listen to these different creative personalities and hear how they got to where they are, what it is that drives them, what it is that motivates them. Because for everybody, it's different. Everybody does different things, and everybody looks at life differently.
And what might be important to you might not be important to somebody else. And what's important to somebody else might be like, holy crap, I didn't even think of that. Then that becomes a whole new world to you. And it's like, awesome.
It's wild. And like for me, I as you mentioned earlier, I'm an open book. I have no problem telling my entire story here. I was somebody who, as a teenager, made a lot of bad decisions. So prior to the bad decisions, I was heavily influenced by a show called Live Audio Wrestling. It was a AM radio show on Sunday nights that was Jason Agnew talking about professional wrestling, did recaps, and I would tune in every week. Actually, our guest next week, Brendan, was a regular listener as well, that I found out.
Neat.
So I got really influenced and wanted to pursue a career in broadcasting. And somewhere along the way, I got lost. I got heavily into drugs and partying and drinking and living that wild lifestyle. And that went on for far longer than it should have, to say the very least. But, 3-4 years ago now, I made the decision to put all that behind me. I mean, I still enjoy the odd beer. I still like to enjoy the odd recreational marijuana now that it's legal here in Canada. But you had to put the things that were vices behind you. And thankfully, I had the right people in my corner that helped me clean my act up. And in that time now, it's been, I think, almost 4 years that I've been clean from anything illegal, anything that I don't want to be touching. And we're at a point now that I spent the last 2 years going after the things that I want, being a wrestling podcast, being a broadcasting career, getting involved in the wrestling world along the way. I never knew that I could just get to interview these talents, get to be involved in these different promotions, doing VIPs or on screen or in the ring, just getting to do that all because you change your perspective and change the way you look at life. One thing I've always said to people, especially if you're listening right now and you're in a hard place, you're doing drugs, you're doing whatever, and you're not happy with where you are, or even if you're happy with where you are, but know it's not the right place, whether you make the decision to change right now, just know that that decision needs to come, and people will be there to help you when you decide to make that decision. Because at the end of the day, nobody can force you to. I could sit here and tell you to make the decision to change tomorrow, but whether you listen or not is going to be completely up to you. The main thing is that when you make that change, trust me, it is going to be the greatest thing you could do. Like, I cannot stress enough. I still got a long way to climb. Like, I am in no way, shape, or form out of the woods yet. But in the last 3-4 years, the difference that my life has had and the happiness that I've experienced compared to the 6, 7, 8 years that I was involved in this crazy world, it speaks volumes. And I can't stress enough how much, when you're ready to make that change, it will be the best change you've ever decided to make.
Now, I know that you do a ton of social media.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing podcasting, several different kinds. I've seen just in the past couple of days, you've shared probably 3 or 4 different new shows that you're working on. Do you find that that is helping you deal with any addictions or any kind of excess that was a trap for you before?
I don't think that it helps me deal with the addictions per se. I think for me, dealing with the addictions was, and again, everybody's different, so I don't want anyone to hear what I'm saying and think that, oh, that's what I have to do. But for me, I was very much, I kind of just took the reins and said, I can't be involved in this anymore, because the way my life was it was a miserable state. At that stage, I wasn't watching professional wrestling regularly. I didn't care about wrestling, to be honest. And that was a weird thing for me because I was such a mega fan growing up. It was such a crucial part of my life for so long. I think to get clean from it, I guess the part that helps me fight addiction is just knowing that I don't want to be in that world. The podcasting aspect has helped me find a happiness in something that I didn't know I needed, if that makes sense. It helps me relate to other people, and I'm able to build these relationships that I lost when I was addicted to all these things. I'm able to be a person that I wasn't before. I'm able to be myself, if anything else. So,
yeah, wrestling is an interesting world. If people are listening and don't really know the backstory of pro wrestling, it's not amateur wrestling. It's not the kind of stuff where you get points and you go to the Olympics. It's a show. Mm-hmm. It's a bunch of really talented athletes who plan and run a show with a predetermined outcome, with dramatics and theatrics and athletics and all kinds of craziness that goes on. And Ryan and myself have been lucky enough to meet a lot of these guys and women and promoters and all these other interesting people that are involved in the world. And it's fascinating. And there's a lot of people who do it for all different reasons. Some are from people just like pain, to people just want to express themselves, like RJ City, who's more of an actor and does this great flamboyant personality, and he just twists the whole general theme of what wrestling could be. And I love that side of it. And when I watch you do your interviews with these guys, you're bringing out a completely different side. Oh, just threw my pencil. a completely different side of what we would normally expect to hear from these burly, tough athletes. So,
and I think to your point as well, you actually, with your statement there, it helped me answer your previous question. I don't want to ever use wrestling or my podcasting as something that helps me stay clean from my addiction, because the second I do that, if I ever lost wrestling, if I ever lost that world, then all of a sudden, you never know you know what I mean? I don't know mentally what that would do to me. Right now, I'm at a place where, as much as I love the wrestling world, if I left the wrestling world tomorrow, if the wrestling world left me tomorrow, I know that I would stay clean. I know that I'm still mentally in a place where I don't want to go back to that. So I think for me, the addiction side of it is I've had to stay mentally I don't want to go back to that world that I was living in. Now, finding the wrestling world has been giving me a place to find my voice and find my way. But in no way do I ever want to attribute my staying clean to the wrestling world or to the podcasting world. Because again, if I ever lost that, it's a weird conundrum, right? It's a weird sort of complex that you find yourself in.
Well, we're seeing a lot of it, actually. There's a lot of wrestlers who can't do anything these days, and some of them are taking the opportunity to better themselves, and some of them are disappearing and falling into these traps that we've seen more recently all of a sudden of big issues in that world sometimes. But I think when we have the guests on, like Brendan and some of the other people that we'll have on in the future, we'll delve into that a little bit more. But for yourself, what would you think is the perfect solution to an end career? Like, what is your dream? This is what I'm striving for. This would make every goal of mine successful in life. Is there something?
That's a tough question. It's a tough question only because I try to do so much. My wife gives me a lot of trouble because she says you take on way too many things. As you mentioned, I've dropped 3 or 4 different shows and all these different projects I'm trying to do. Honestly, my end goal, I don't know if I have an end career, but I want to be able to talk with people. If I could make money just providing incredible content to the world by sharing different stories, helping others, and providing a life for my family, that's the end goal for me. That's the end career, is being able to share stories, help others, and provide for my own family. That to me that's aces.
Yeah, I hear that. Totally hear that. And hey, maybe this might have something to do with that. You never know.
You go. We can never know.
that would be freaking awesome. Do you guys have questions for Ryan?
So are you?
And please, before, real quick, don't nothing is off limits. Nothing is off limits because I know.
Awesome. So I guess my first question would be, are you a wrestler?
No. Judging by these arms, not even close. So for me, I joined the wrestling world. Actually, I met Bryan the very first event that I ever did, which was I messaged Sean Gibson of Barry Wrestling.
I didn't realize that was your first one.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've ever actually heard this story, Bryan, but the way I got into wrestling was I booked the very first Chris Jericho cruise, and I did it on a whim. I called my wife right after I did it and said I did something, and needless to say, you should always tell your wife before you book a cruise. Don't do what I did.
Did you take her with you?
What's that?
Did you take her with you?
She didn't want to come. She didn't want to come. Otherwise, I've tried. I tried for about 6 months to get her on this boat, and she says, I'm not going. I don't want to go on a boat. So,
wow.
Not without trying.
And you're still together. Well done.
And we're still together. Actually, she's coming on the 3rd cruise now. Fast forward 2 years, she is going to be coming on the 3rd cruise. But
you wore her down.
There you go. Anyways, so I'm on this cruise, and I ran into Scott D'Amore, who is he runs Impact Wrestling, one of the bigger wrestling companies. And I basically went up to him and said, listen, I have X amount of money that I want to invest into wrestling. I'd love to do it with you. And he took me aside and said, listen, kid, don't invest your money into wrestling. You're going to lose all of it. If you want to get involved, talk to, and he gave me some names and basically put me in the right direction. That led me to Sean, which then led me to basically showing up to help set up a ring. Sean said, hey, we need guys to help set up the ring. I said, sounds good. And I took it upon myself to message Brendan and Kobe Durst, another wrestler here in Ontario, and said, look, I'm going to be at the show setting up the ring. I also do a podcast. Would you guys like to do an interview with me? So I drove up, helped them set up the ring. I think we did the ring setup at like 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 or 9 a.m. that morning. And I live in Stratford, about 3 hours from Barrie. So I'm up about 4 or 5 in the morning, on the road by about 5:30, just so I can be in Barrie for 8 o'clock, and set up the ring. And somewhere along the line, they asked me to do this VIP session. And that became a repetitive thing. So for every month, I just kept coming back and doing these VIP sessions. And from there, it led me into other wrestling promotions. So I had other promotions approaching me to do, whether it be VIP sessions or on-screen work to do interviews with their wrestlers, pardon me. It grew from there. So I don't know where it's going to lead. Will I ever become a wrestler? I can guarantee you no, because I look at what these guys do and say, I don't have that sort of discipline. I don't have the muscle. I don't have the athleticism. But I do love being involved in the wrestling world. I do love being a character in the wrestling world, which has been huge to me. Getting to be more involved in that aspect has been wonderful. So, but no, to answer your question, I am in no way a wrestler, and I will never make that claim to be a wrestler.
Awesome. I was just curious because I don't know, and I feel like maybe the people who are eventually going to be listening to this might want to know too. So that's cool.
Yeah,
For sure.
and to anybody listening too, like, just because of my size, that doesn't mean that I couldn't become a wrestler. If you're small, you can easily become a wrestler. I just know I'm not going to put in that work. I take it upon myself to know I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm not going to put in that work. So.
Well, you also know how you want to express yourself better. I mean, you don't want to express yourself in the ring. You want to express yourself by telling or giving the platform for the people that are in the ring to tell their story.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is needed as much as the wrestler.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's awesome.
Another thing I wanted to ask, well, like, I guess not ask, but I just really appreciate that you came out and talked about your battle with addiction. Like, I have people in my family who have been addicted to things or have really struggled with mental health. That's a big thing for me. And I think it's really brave. Anytime somebody comes out and talks about it on a regular basis, I feel like it really helps a lot of people. Even just hearing from somebody who might be struggling with that, someone that they might, I guess, admire, or someone that they might just like listen to on a regular basis, knowing that other people have struggled with that, I think is really helpful to other people.
I appreciate that.
That's awesome. So cool.
Yeah, seeing people that are happy on the other side makes a big difference. You know, when
100%. I think that was a big thing for me, was that when I was waking up, there was one morning, and I won't share the full story, but there was one morning where I partied way too hard the night before. I did a lot of things I shouldn't have done. And I woke up, and it was the last time, that was the last night I ever touched anything. And I woke up that next morning, and I realized how bad of a state that I was in. I called a friend of mine. He took me out of town for 2 days. We basically went on a camping trip. He said, look, we're going to get you fixed up. We're going to get you all figured out. And I remember just being on social media, and I was just looking at, I can't remember who, it was Steve-O. It was Steve-O's video, and seeing the change that Steve-O had made. I don't know if you guys are too familiar with the career and life change that Steve-O has made. But Steve-O, of course, of Jackass fame, has gone from one of the most wild and ridiculous people in the world to a sober, cleaned up, family, well, maybe not family friendly, but he's really changed his life, and you can see how happy it made him while he got to be the same person he always was. And that, to me, it definitely sparked something. That it helped make me realize that there was a better way. And so you need that. You need to have those people expressing that there's a better way to live your life, and you're going to be happier if you do it.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Mark,
Well,
anything
that's
to ask, Ryan?
So, well, I just one thing, and it's something that you actually said earlier, and Ryan didn't object to it. So you mentioned that wrestling. So I've got two questions basically. You mentioned wrestling has a predetermined outcome. And now I'm not a wrestling fan, per se. I mean, I do enjoy it when I see it. I've been to a couple of the wrestling events. Obviously we talked about one earlier. But I'm not somebody that follows. I'm not a sports guy. I don't follow any sports, but every now and again I do partake of an event, and I do enjoy it when I'm there. So I guess my question is, how do you deal with people that are so adamant that that it is not predetermined, that they think it's all completely real?
So it's, for me, I love it. If somebody is adamant to the point that they won't see it any other way, I will either just start trolling them back, because I understand that there's no arguing with that person at that point. They only see wrestling as, it's fake. I can't believe you'd watch that lame stuff, yada, yada, yada. And once they hit that point, once they're making no sense essentially and don't have an open mind to it, there's nothing I can say that's going to change their perspective.
Just move on.
Now,
Agreed.
exactly.
Yeah.
I have coworkers at work that when I first met them, they kind of had that, oh, you like wrestling, eh? But now we're at a stage, I've been working at my job now for a little over a year, and I go into work now showing them wrestling clips, being like, you guys won't believe what happened on Raw, or you guys won't believe how crazy this was back in 2006. So even though they're not wrestling fans and they know that it's fake, quote unquote, they're able to appreciate it. Whether they're going to watch it on their own is moot, but the fact that they're able to at least respect it when I'm showing it to them and show a genuine interest, that means the world to me. If you are just going to be closed-minded, there's no proving you any different. I find the only way to prove anyone who's that closed-minded is to physically show them. And if they see it and still feel that way, there's nothing else you can do. I mean, exactly as Bryan said, hands up, you walk away. I mean,
That's perfect. Perfect. Yeah. And it's so in so many areas of life, it's better just to put your hands up and say, okay, and just walk away from it and just let them be.
Yep.
So my second question for you is, now obviously you work, you mentioned you work for Radio Shack, but also you've got the podcasts going, and it sounds like you've got a lot of different projects. When did you decide, or when did you realize that you wanted to broadcast? I mean, obviously you've got one of those voices that, I mean, I think no matter what the subject, I think people will listen to you because you've got a voice that draws people in. But when did you decide that broadcasting is what I want to do?
I decided, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. On Facebook today, I shared a post promoting this channel called Byte Television. It was a small local channel in Toronto, and it was run by Jason Agnew, the same guy that did the wrestling radio show that I listened to. So early on in high school, I had actually started a podcast called the Three-Way Podcast. And this was well before podcasts are where they are now. Not going to lie, this is one of the few things that I think I was ahead of my time on, where I launched this podcast and nobody was doing podcasts. And because of that, my podcast obviously went nowhere because nobody knew what a podcast really was. The only people doing podcasts were the ones listening to podcasts. And it was a pretty small world at that point. And because of that, there was a weird stage where shortly after that, I got into the drugs. I got into making the bad decisions, and it fell out. It wasn't until I got cleaned up and about a year after staying clean and staying on the right path that I started to think, okay, well, what do I want to do with my life? Because I clearly don't want to stay in retail my whole life. As much as I love it, it's not what I want to do. And that's when I thought back to being in high school, what it was that I wanted to do before I made those bad decisions. And it led to Nights of the Squared Circle. Being on the Jericho Cruise had a big part of that because, again, doing something that I never thought I'd get to be a part of. Prior to that Jericho Cruise, I had never traveled. I had never gone anywhere. I was somebody who, again, made bad decisions. Those people stay at home. Well, I was living in a basement, essentially, if I was lucky. So going on that cruise really kind of helped me appreciate where I was in my life at that point. And it sparked a fire in me. So when I got off that boat, I think the cruise was in October. Nights of the Squared Circle launched. What was it? I think my first Barrie event wasn't too long after the cruise. I want to say 4 months after the cruise, I attended the very first Barrie wrestling event and did a VIP session. Night to the Squared Circle wasn't a thing at that point. I was just trying to do interviews and figure out what I could do and if I was able to do it. And it wasn't long after that I launched the podcast, and now we're all guns blazing. So
very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, tools of the trade, Ryan.
Tools of the trade. For me, it's got to be my mic here. I've always got my Yeti with me. I bring that to every Barrie wrestling event, any wrestling show that I go to, every show that I work on, that thing. There you go. Yep. The Yeti is definitely my tool of the trade.
Got the Yeti.
Alternatively, though, as you mentioned, it's creativity and it's personality. For me, if I don't have my personality, if I'm not turned on, then there's nothing. I'm not creating good content, and people aren't going to want to listen. If I come out and just go, hey, Bryan, so what do you want to talk about today? How's things going in photography? It doesn't work, right? You have to be turned on. You have to be able to go at a high level. So
awesome. Very cool. All right. And what's your jam?
My jam right now is Tom McDonald, actually, a very controversial rapper who's been out for a couple of years now. I'm into everything. I've been working in radio for about a decade. So I've worked at a country music station. I've worked at classic rock stations. I've worked at a whole variety of places. So I love all types of music, but Tom McDonald is definitely what I've been playing nonstop for a few weeks. So
awesome. Very cool. I love everybody's got something totally different so far.
Yeah. No, I love the variety.
Group.
The diversity of the group is definitely makes for an entertaining episode.
And so far, nobody's.
I hope, guys.
yeah. And it's funny because I was literally just about to say, so far, nobody's talking over each other, and I talked over you. So.
Yeah, we all knew Bryan over here. He's the bossiest guy. He's trying to control the whole thing.
It's just bound to happen eventually, I guess. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. That has been great so far. And now we've been on for an hour and 17. So we got to say goodbye. Thank you all very much for listening today. And
before we leave, Bryan, sir.
In this corner, there's a guy that we missed.
There's a guy that we haven't talked about quite yet.
Yeah. You had to call me on that, didn't you?
I was just going to say, you're not getting out of it that easy.
All right. No, that's cool. I am Bryan Weiss. Hello, everybody.
Bryan, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Nice to meet you too. I got a text earlier that I'm being very loud. So I'm not going to be all like I usually am. But yeah, I guess I call myself the lazy photographer. There's a lot of things that I love to do. Before I was in photography, though, like I actually had a whole life before I even had a camera. I didn't have a camera until I started working at Henry's. So I never really had I guess when I was younger in Montreal, my uncle owned a camera store, and he got my brother a Yashica SLR kit for his bar mitzvah when he was 13. Of course, I was never allowed to touch that camera. So I was always on the outs of the photography world. By the time I turned 13, my parents had split, and I never really had any kind of bar mitzvah per se. I read a paragraph in front of a Reformed synagogue I'd never been to before. The paragraph was "to be a Jew," and here's me. I'm more Jewish, I guess you could say, than Jew. But that's just because I didn't really have it in my life a whole lot once I was over a certain age. So I never really practiced it. And to be honest with you, I'm not a religious kind of person. I believe in faith. I believe in being strong and being a good person and treat people like you want to be treated. But as far as needing a religion for that, that's not really been my thing. So the bar mitzvah thing wasn't really a big deal to me. But I got like a 110 camera. My brother gets this 35 millimeter rig, and I get this little 110 Kodak. Yay! Anyway, it certainly didn't encourage me to get into photography. Let's just put it that way. But since then, since I grew up and didn't have to worry about being bitter about that, I've done a lot of stuff. Thankfully, when I started working at Henry's, I was opened up to all kinds of opportunities, which was great. Before that, I'd sold car audio and home audio video for since 1990, I guess. And I'd sold a lot of stuff in retail. Retail's always been my world because that's what I knew. But when I started working at Henry's, all of a sudden, 2 years after I started, I approached the owner at the time, Mark Wolfson, and I asked him at a Henry's exposure show, hey, would you mind if I started this business called Day Tripper Photo, teaching people photography in the field, like going to Algonquin or local walks on the Tom Taylor Trail, or what's morphed into like burning steel wool and birds of prey workshops and all kinds of really cool photo classes, but hands-on, because at the time, Henry's was teaching people in a school of imaging classroom. And I hear them leaving the class and thinking to themselves, what did I learn? Like, how am I going to retain this information? I just sat in the classroom and learned. So I thought, let's get them out in the field. And when Mark said, yeah, sure, go for it, that gave me permission to really expand on that and start to build workshops. And eventually I was doing 1 to 2 workshops every month through the entire year, fast forward 13 years to COVID, and had nothing to do all in 2020, which was hard. When you're doing so many workshops and all kinds of different things. Like I started the Newmarket Camera Club. I ran a photo expo in 2015 when I rented the entire Newmarket community center and had 9 different photo instructors and 30 workshops over 2.5 days. And it was just a lot of fun. I had a TV show.
Can I interrupt for a quick second, Brian?
Sure, yeah.
Because I'm just kind of curious, because I feel like you and I are very similar in the sense that we both, I think, leading into like pre-COVID, we both were working on projects. We both had things going for us and had different, as like with the Day Tripper events you were doing, with the Nights of the Squared Circle sessions, we both had things that were sidelined by COVID and by 2020, and then we were forced to adapt to a different way of presenting our content. I know for you were doing different live streams at one point in your backyard just to be like, hey, these are the workshops that I can provide. This is the only way I can do it.
I made some of my favorite photos doing that too, actually, which was really cool. But yeah, it's true. Having nothing to do forces you to think outside the box and to, dig deep. Am I a creative? Is it just a fake thing? Like, do I have any kind of merit? I don't submit my photos for photo contests. I don't put myself out there to get hired to do work because it's not my thing. It doesn't make me happy. Actually, there's a story there. When I was, considering to get hired to do work, I did one job where I was down in the city taking pictures at the Christmas parade, the Toronto Christmas parade. And the job was to photograph the clowns at the beginning of the parade. I don't know if you know the story of the clowns, but they're celebrities and people with lots of money, and they pay huge money to dress up like a clown and walk at the front of the Toronto parade. And that money has actually saved the parade from going bankrupt a couple times because it's big money these people pay. Okay. But because they're paying so much money, they want to have photos. So I was hired by the person who was hired to do the photos to be his second. And we set up backdrops and we took pictures of all the clowns and we had a great time doing that. And then we followed the parade in the bus and taking pictures of all the clowns in the parade. And, you know, I'm all about story. When I shoot pro wrestling, I'm trying to create a story in the photos. I don't want to have just a static picture of a wrestler's face or, you know, just something boring. I'm trying to I usually have the three people in there, the ref and the two wrestlers, and there's some sort of interaction going on between them. And I like that kind of thing. I always want there to be a story and an image. So when I was doing this, it was just weird for me to not put a story in there. So here I am on the bus with all the clowns throwing beads out the window, and I'm shooting from behind the clowns so you can see the people catching the bead, and I'm shooting jump off the bus and shoot the crowd catching the beads and trying to get these different perspectives and stories going on. And when I submitted the photos, he's like, well, we can't use 2/3 of these. So, and I was just like, what? What's wrong with them? Well, you know, I'd have to edit them and I'd have to do this and that. And they're not usable. So I can only use like a 30 of your images. And I'm like, I felt horrible. Like I submitted images that weren't functional. So that's when I came up with the whole philosophy, I shoot for me. And that has been my hashtag since 2017 when I did this. And it's really given me the permission to just do me and not worry about fulfilling other people's needs, which is extremely important for somebody with my kind of brain, where I'm extremely hypercritical of everything I do. And I don't think what I do is great. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to these same kind of things.
I think you're among friends here. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why all of us are kind of connected to the concept of this show, is that we're able to, you know, bring people up with the struggles that we've had and the struggles our guests will have had. And I think that's super important to hear, that even though you may not think you're worth it, you just keep on doing you and something's going to happen, whether this happens or the next thing happens, or I'm just making myself happy. That's all that really matters. So I shoot for me became kind of my life motto. And it was important. It was very, very important to me. And one of the things that really struck me with all of our conversation is that family has a big part to do with it. Our families have had huge influences on our lives. Aurora, your parents were both musicians. So were mine. My father was a folk music player in a band called the Yeomen. So I remember in Montreal growing up, 5 years old, 4 years old, hearing my father and his band playing downstairs, where there's me trying to go to sleep upstairs, and I don't want to sleep. I want to go and play with the band, and I want to hear the music. And that started my trend on never sleeping. And then, you know, it's just, you see all these things that happen to you as you're growing up that kind of mold who you end up becoming. And that whole concept is extremely fascinating to me. I used to be into music. Well, I am into music. Music is my life. There's pretty much music playing in my head 24/7. And it has to be something with drums, because I used to play the drums. I say used to because I have a drum set. It's just all folded down and I haven't played in a decade really. But I think once you're in music, it's like Mark. You have guitars, you say.
Yeah, I've a couple hanging around.
But you don't consider yourself to be a guitar player per se.
I don't. No.
It's like me. Like I played the drums and I can hold a beat. In fact, a guest that we have coming up in a future episode, Mikey Cuthbertson, was nice enough to have me on stage at a jam night one day where all my coworkers at work got to see me play, which was really cool. But, you know, these things come and go. And when I lost drumming, because, you know, I moved into a semi-detached home and I have my mother-in-law in the basement, I'm not going to go clanging on a drum set in here. I had to find something else to do. And that's when photography fell in my lap. And that's when I started working at Henry's. And since then, I got to tell you, it's been pretty awesome. I mean, with all the day tripper stuff I've done and with all the people I've met and with all of the inspiration that I get from people who say I help them, that's pretty cool. That is like a huge success for me. So as far as I'm concerned, my qualifications for being here are merely that I love photography. I think I love hearing the stories. I know I love hearing the stories of the people we're going to be talking to. I feel I'm a creative in that I have a lot of things that I feel like I want to do. And I think this is just a great idea, a great mix for us to just get this stuff out there.
You know, you nailed it, Bryan. You're not wrong when you say you're hypercritical of yourself. I will admit that.
I'm not
Just
wrong.
hearing you say I think I'm a creative mind. I mean, Bryan, just personally as somebody I've only known you, I think now for maybe 2 years, roughly.
About that, yep.
About that, yeah. And in the 2 years, we've only seen each other at wrestling events, but when we catch up, we get along fairly well. Everything I've ever seen you put out, every photo you put out, you can tell there's art. Here's the thing, I could never create what you create, at least not at my skill level now. You know what I mean? I need to put in the work. I would need to put in a lot of learning just to get to where you're at right now. So to say that I think I'm a creative mindset, I want to at least assure you that you definitely are. I think there's a lot of people that will back you up on that.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I do. But keep in mind, too, as far as pro wrestling photography was going, I've been doing that since 2007. Mm-hmm. So you say you'd have to put a lot of work into it? Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And I did. And it doesn't mean that I am where I want to be. There's a lot of wrestling photographers that I look at and I'm like, oh my God, I mean, shooting the indies and, Speedy Photo and all these other amazing shooters out there that I want to have on this show eventually. Mm-hmm. Those are the people that I see with a different artistic flair that they're different. And I love that. But, I just do me. So if people,
that's all we can do. That's all we can do is do us. And yeah, I want to assure you that you are definitely a creative personality. There is no question about that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of artists and creatives are very critical of themselves. They're very scared to put out what they've created. Like from the same mindset of myself, like I can sing, but I don't like singing in front of people. I hardly sing in front of my boyfriend. I hardly sing in front of my friends and my family that I've known for my entire life. But you have one person say something that kind of puts you down, or you have one thought in your mind that kind of gets you thinking very critically of yourself. And I think a good conversation that'll come out of this criticism and this critiquing of yourself is try not to do that as much. I've been trying, especially over the last year and a half, I've been really trying to focus on myself and focus on trying not to second guess myself all the time, trying not to second guess what I do. And you end up doing more things and trying more and learning more as a result of that. So I feel like anybody who is going to be listening, I hope they're inspired by that. Even if you make a mistake, even if you make something that doesn't look good or sound good, or you don't put out your best performance, like in wrestling or dance or whatever it may be, you can still make more. You can still learn from it.
There's definitely a healthy balance between cocky and confident.
Yes.
At the end of the day, you have to be confident in what you're doing. And even when you're, especially with us, I know all of us can relate to this. We are all hypercritical of the content that we're trying to put out there and the content that we're making. And at the end of the day, what I think you guys can all relate to this as well, we still put it out there. Not all of it, but we still, at the end of the day, we finally find that strength to put it out there. And it's realizing that even those things that we're still, there's things that I have not put out yet. And I'm sure you guys are in the same boat. There are things that in the back of your mind, you're like, you know what, I can't put this out. And that for whatever reason, you're criticizing it. And I'm doing the same thing. But at the end of the day, we know we're going to put that out. We know if we don't, it's just going to sit and fester on our minds regardless. So at a certain level, you have to hit that confidence. And as I mentioned, there's a fine line between confident and cocky.
True.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that pulled me out of doing camera clubs is ego. And we touched on the topic of gear earlier, how I'm not a big fan of, boasting about gear, because to me, a lot of that's ego. Mm-hmm. Look at my expensive camera, look at my expensive lenses. Like I go to take pictures where there's a bird sighting or something and people show up with this equipment like, dude, all you really need is just something straightforward and some understanding of what you're doing. Anyway, that's a side point. Yeah. But, it's what I find about photography that was so important to me and what really helped me was it really showed me that I can control time in a photo. I can really express myself with just time and light, which is just so crazy of a concept. Being able to make blur in certain areas and sharpness in certain areas to make something look like it's moving through a frame or any of those things. And when I started doing some shots that people looked at and were like, oh, cool, like the rodeo photo that I made or, a photo here or there, that gave me some confidence that I didn't really think I'd ever get. I've worked with some pretty impressive talent in Henry's Newmarket, Peter Mckinnon, just to name one, who, you know, if people follow YouTube, they know that Pete's been pretty influential in a lot of video makers and things like that. And when you work with people like that and you're hanging out at work and you like trying to edit something and Pete comes over and goes, hey, why don't you just do this? And you look at your photo and you're like, how did you do that? You know, like, oh my God, I can't, you are a magician, you know, like, and then I would never have thought to do that. And meanwhile, it just took Pete like 20 seconds to just like, whoop, 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 and anyway, so when you compare yourself to people like that, it's very hard to walk away with any confidence. Mm-hmm. And I've been very fortunate to, and even some situations. And Mark, you know, again, I give you huge credit in my world for bringing me out of a very bad funk one time. And I think you know where I'm going with this, where, you know, I was having a conversation with a mentor. And, you know, some words were said that basically came down to that I don't really have any photos to represent my brand. So how can I expect to, you know, promote my business that way? Because my photos aren't good enough. And this was from somebody who was like somebody that theoretically I was paying to teach me. And I was done. And
sorry, just so I have this right, this is somebody that you're paying to teach you, and he's telling you that your photos aren't good enough.
To promote my brand, pretty much, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And so Mark immediately messages me in the background, like, "Dude, don't listen to this."
Right. Well, you're a smart man, Mark. You're a very smart man.
Well, okay. So let's go into a little background. I actually have a question for Bryan that I'll throw out there. But first off, when I started really taking photography to the next level, like when I was taking it in college, I started wanting to take courses and learn more. There was a few photographers that were those people that I looked up to. They were the ones that I was like, oh my God, if I could only one day shoot like this person. And one of those people on that very short list, the name was Bryan Weiss. And I always wanted to shoot like Bryan. I always wanted to be able to be like Bryan. Now on your day trip, my wife and I both came on it to Joker's Hill.
That's right.
You had the one photo that was on the wall for the longest time.
I know we've been talking a very long time. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah. So the one photo that was on the wall that was of Joker's Hill that you took. That's part of the reason why I went on that trip. I wanted to see that photo. I wanted to try and emulate it myself, and that's what I started trying to do. So that's where I saw that. But my question becomes, when did you decide you wanted to be an educator? To teach photography?
Honestly, I did that out of necessity.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I did that out of just you know, seeing the people leaving that classroom confused and knowing that I had a way of explaining it better. And then once I found that way actually was clicking with a lot of people, I just took that to the day tripper concept, and it just I loved it. I loved being on a trail with somebody and being able to say one little nugget of information and have them go, oh my God, I can't believe I never got that before. And then they could take that somewhere totally different. That to me is the happiest thing. If I can give a couple little nuggets to somebody and have them be a photographer that's 20 times better than I could ever be, that's my mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned. Like, I'm not here to make photos that I'm going to sell or to get those wedding jobs that I'm going to make $4,000 a pop from. I'm here to get you to do that and to make everybody else make that income if that's what they want to do. So that's when I started feeling really inspired by it.
Yeah. Excellent. Great.
Ryan just had to take off for a quick second. He'll be right back. But in the meantime, I guess that's pretty much me. I just love photography. I love doing this stuff. And I'm so happy you guys all agreed to be a part of the Expressions podcast. I know we've been talking a really long time tonight, so I'm sure a lot more of our personalities and our stories are going to come out through other episodes as we interview other people. I'm super excited about some of the people that we have coming up soon. We have a whole list of people. We have the next, 8 weeks booked with interviews, which is really great. I do want to say one thing though, before I go, one of the things, and again, I talked about this earlier, one of the things that I think is the most important thing about any creative is understanding your story, understanding where you came from, understanding the influences that brought you to where you are today. I can pin all of my photography and all of my appreciation for art down to one visit to a museum that my mother took me to in Massachusetts that
I
I
was
found.
going to ask you about this because
Oh, were
we
you?
had such an interesting conversation about this, and I didn't want this to not be mentioned. So,
Oh, cool.
Good.
Well, I was, I don't even know what brought us to do it, but my mother brought me to this museum in Massachusetts somewhere. Actually, let's see if it's on here. Yeah, Williamstown, Massachusetts, at the Sterling and Francine Clark Art Institute. And I'm saying that because I have the cards that I bought when I was there. I must have been 13 years old, maybe a little bit younger. But we show up at this exhibit or at this museum, and I saw the work of Frederick Remington. Now, I've got the postcards of Remington that I bought when we were there. Let's see if I can get this to focus in. This is one called The Scout. And I saw the original, and with all the texture of the paintbrush and with all the detail and the differences between the whites on this side of the paper, the whites back here and the whites here and the white coming out of the horse's nose, and just seeing all that texture and all the differences that he made in the art, it was like, holy crap, this guy really knows what he's doing. He's able to tell a story. Like this shot right here, another one of the photos that really stuck out for me. Let's see if I can get that to focus in.
They're paintings, right?
Yes, paintings.
I was going to say those are paintings for sure.
Sorry, oil paintings. But just the guy with the horse, and it's almost impossible for me to do this. I don't think my lens focus is close enough. But bottom line is they touched me in a way that I still have the cards today. And I've moved so many times, and these cards come with me every time I move. And it's really been a foundation of my appreciation for what I like. I like rodeo. I like horses. I like action. I like movement. I like story. I like all of these things that make a viewer look at a photo and go, holy crap, or wow, that's got color. I love light painting. As you can see, I like color in my stuff, right? So it's that molded me to where I am today. And I didn't even know it until I got into photography years later. So I like to give these influences. I like to give these moments to people. I love teaching at McMichael Art Gallery, their summer program or their spring programs, teaching the kids photography. I love opening people's eyes to something that may not have ever been open to them before. And then who knows what can happen with that. So hopefully this show is going to do that for people. Hopefully with all the different diverse guests that we're going to have on, people are going to start to see that it doesn't matter if you're a photographer, or if you're a musician, or if you're a podcaster, or if you're a woodworker. And by the way, I just got confirmation a few minutes ago that my friend, the woodworker, is going to be a guest on our show. So
all right, awesome. Brian's friend, the woodworker.
Tyler McRae. Can't wait. But these are all the people that we're going to find something new about, and the tools of the trade. You know, what's important to you? What makes your day better? That's going to give people that want to do that a tool that they may not have thought about. Or the music, like what triggers your music is going to give people an insight into what we like and all our personalities, and all of these questions and all of these opportunities that we have in this podcast. I'm just so excited about. So
one quick story, actually, I want to bring up. Just hearing you show those photos and the oil paintings there. You guys were asking earlier about tools of the trade and what we like. We were all showing off our Yeti mics earlier. About I want to say three years ago, so quite earlier. I found my original podcast mic. So when I was mentioning earlier, I did the three-way podcast. I came across the very first mic I'd ever purchased. I bought this from a local Walmart in Orillia, Ontario. I went in. It's a little clip-on mic about this big, just sits right there. It's this cheap little, probably $10 mic. And I recorded at least 40 hours plus worth of podcasts when I was 14, 15 on this little thing. I recently discovered it, and that helped me realize what it was I wanted to do. So you never know what it is that you've got from your childhood, what it is that really sparked an interest that you could hold on to, and you don't even realize it. But I held on to this mic for 10, 15 years now without realizing that it was so important to me. And once I found it again, I thought, this is why I never threw this thing out. I didn't throw this out because I wanted to look back and go, this is where it all started.
That's right. They're so important. All these influences are so important. I'm going to go over my quick tool of the trade, and it's going to be something that you may not have expected. 3 things, actually. First of all, I know it sounds silly, but this memory card wallet. This is such a cool accessory. This blue strap, no matter where this is in my camera bag, I find it every time. It holds a ton of memory cards. It makes it very easy to find my stuff. I put a card in upside down if I've used it, and normal if I haven't. It's this little system I've worked out. And I know it sounds really silly, but this small little memory card wallet is such a handy thing to have. And you've always got your cards, and I can find it everywhere. It's awesome. Yeah, you got your Think Tank wallet right there. Another thing that I always have on me is my flashlights. Anybody that knows me knows I've always got a flashlight on my hip, whether it's one with multiple colors or if it's just the standard mag light that I have here on my hip all the time. You never know when you can use a good flashlight. And the last thing is my Leatherman tool, because it doesn't matter what camera I have, which is usually the Schwartz, my Nikon D7100, or something I've borrowed like a D780 or something like that, which I love. No matter what camera I have, I'm always using my Leatherman to screw the pieces in the bottom, or to pull something out of somewhere if I have to, or to cut something, or to cut tape. I use this thing probably 20 times a day, and I've had this one for about 15 years now. So those are the weird things that you might not have thought about. Maybe people would think it's a lens or a camera bag or whatever, but these are things that make my daily better. And they help me be more creative, and they help me express myself better. So I thought I would use those as my tool of the trade.
That's awesome. I really liked your discussion about the piece of art that could kind of track back to what sparked your creativity. Do Ryan and Mark have something like that? That kind of one, either if it's wrestling, like one performance that stuck out in your mind and that really wowed you, or Mark, like a particular photo or piece of artwork, whatever it may be. Do you have something like that?
I mean, for me, the microphone definitely was now the microphone for sure. That initial microphone was when I saw that for the first time when I unpacked it a few years ago. Again, I wasn't doing a podcast. I was pretty much just this guy that was trying to figure out where he was going in life. And I found this little mic and went, I don't know why I still have this. Why did I hang on to this? And it's because I'm nostalgic, and I always thought, who knows, maybe I'll be able to sell this when I'm rich and famous. And that was the very first mic I ever used, right? But it was seeing that mic again that really sparked a creative flame in me. That, again, it's not the reason I got back into it, but seeing that definitely planted the seed. Okay,
awesome. And how about you, Mark?
I don't know if there's any a piece of art or an item. I mean, I still have that first 35 millimeter fixed focal length camera that my dad gave me that I took that first photography course with. It's in my case, and I actually shot a roll of film with it a couple years ago. I haven't developed it yet, but I should do that. But I still have that. That's probably my anchor item.
Awesome.
What about you, Aurora?
I still have the first camera that was ever gifted to me. It's like this crappy 35 millimeter Vivitar, fixed focused, no zoom. I have that point and shoot. It's at the bottom of my camera showcase of over 40 cameras.
Wow.
But yeah, I have that. So I guess that would be my item.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, now, Brian, before we wrap up, Brian, you had mentioned at the start here that there is going to be a challenge at the end of every episode.
Yes.
So please, I'm curious, what is this challenge? I've been waiting all episode.
Okay, well, I've got the challenge, but first I just want to say my jam is, I have to say it's probably one of two songs, either Tool, 46 and 2, which is my number one song of all time.
Great.
If you haven't heard it, I ask you to grace yourself with it. And also Tool, again, their newer song, Pneuma, which has become the story of my life. It's about your spirit, and your pneuma is your spirit and your connection to the world. And it's just musically phenomenal. And if you understand the lyrics, it's just like ridiculous. So yeah, those are my jams. But as far as this challenge goes, okay, so the challenge I'm going to issue, and since the three of us are photographers, I'm going to go out here, and normally, again, the guests are going to choose the challenge for the viewers. And in the future, once we get these, if we get viewers and things like that take off, we're going to probably share these challenge results, and we're going to do these challenges ourselves in the future and so on. Our challenge this week is called Naked Photography. Go for it. No, I'm just. That's not.
Allow me to take the reins on this one, guys.
So here's naked photography. This is something I've actually issued a few times through my Day Tripper web show that I did. It's an interesting concept. So we talked about how gear is so important for people. The naked photography challenge is you set yourself up in an environment with your camera with one lens in a 10-foot by 10-foot room. And you have to make 20 photos only, 5 of which have to be wall worthy. You can't edit. You've got to shoot in JPEG. It's all in camera. So when people rely on their Photoshop or their different lens selections or the super high-end cameras, you're really giving up creativity to the tool. And we see this all the time. Aurora customers coming in, I want to buy the best camera because I want to make better photos, or this person has this camera and makes great photos, I want the same camera. And we both know, okay, if this is going to make your photography better, I'll sell you the camera, but otherwise you're just spending money, which is great for the economy, as I said, and I'm more than happy to sell you stuff. But I want people to be more purposeful in life. Not just in photography. I want you to be purposeful in life. And the Naked Photography Challenge makes you become purposeful. It makes you use a digital camera like it's a film camera. In the past, one of the things that I've done is I've used my camera with just a 50mm lens. And in photography, one of the things you can do is you can reverse mount your lens in some cases, or you can kind of take your lens off and move it around like this. It's called free lensing, where you just kind of leave the camera close, but you get tilted and light bending in different directions by moving it around like this. So I was able to, in one 10-foot by 10-foot area, take all of these pictures with different looking things that looked like macro and looked like all these really cool things, just with one lens, one camera, no editing, shooting in JPEG. And that's the challenge. Naked photography, bare bones, no fluff, no editing, and you make 5 images that you really appreciate. And I still have those photos that I made in my first naked photography challenge that I look at today. I'm like, yeah, they still hold up. They're still a decent image because you're thinking more. You're like looking around. If this was my area, the texture on the top of the Yeti microphone is really cool. And the way the light's hitting it, I can get some really cool effects from that. Or, you know, the condensation on the top of my Yeti mug, or by taking a flashlight and shining it through the mug and getting refraction or a different kind of color from the lights or from the plastic. It's just thinking differently.
So don't gang up on me, guys. Don't gang up on me here. Where that's what, yeah. Just I'm gonna try and distance myself as best as possible. But I don't own a camera.
But you have a cell phone.
I do. As long as you guys are okay with me using a cell phone and not like any 100%. Sort of standard digital. Okay, perfect.
100%. There's no rules. It just means, well, there are rules. You can't edit and that kind of stuff. But I mean, there's no rules to imagination. So. If anybody's listening to this and you want to take advantage of this challenge, feel free to post it on the comments of this. Send us an email to expressionsthepodcast at gmail.com. That's, I believe, what it is. Expressionsthepodcast at gmail.com.
Oh, I hope it is.
Yeah. And then we'll be able to see those images. But you know what? We've been talking for almost 2 hours. And I know this is our first episode. And we will cut this down a little bit, but it's still going to be a long episode. We're going to try and keep these episodes in future to around an hour. But I think out of respect to each of us individually, it was essential for us to get our story out and to let people know why we're doing it. So I appreciate you guys staying as late as you did. Mark, your wife, Chris, I appreciate her letting this go on as long as it did. And I just got to say, I think it's pretty sweet that all 4 of us are all in retail to some capacity. We are all kind of married to some capacity. I know Aurora's not like technically, but you've been together for 10 years. So, I mean, common law and all. None of us have children, not in the human capacity, at least, that I know of, Ryan.
No, not yet. I hope not.
Okay.
So I got some explaining to do if I have.
Even though we're all so different, we have so many common things, which I think is awesome. So,
excellent.
And I think that's about it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully you got through the whole conversation with us. For me, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Aurora, what do you have to say before we say goodbye?
Don't ever lose your creativity just because somebody, might put you down, or you may critique yourself too hard. That's all I had to say.
Awesome. Mark?
Yeah.
I don't think I have any words of wisdom.
That's wise right there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no words for me. I'm good.
Awesome. Ryan?
I just want to appreciate everybody that's tuned in tonight. I know, as Bryan mentioned, it's been a 2-hour show, but it's been integral to get all of our stories told and give you guys an introduction as to what Expressions it's going to be. So I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in, and I really look forward to what the future of Expressions is going to be.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Okay. Before I say goodbye to everybody, I just want to remind everybody mental health is real. Take care of your mental health. Take care of yourself. We at Henry's have a foundation called the Henry's Foundation for Mental Health. All that money goes to CAMH, Kids Help Phone, Jack.org, things like that. So it's a pretty worthy cause to support. I'm probably going to be talking a little bit more about that as we go forward. Mark, you also had something that you really care a lot about.
Yeah, actually, with Shoppers Drug Mart, we host the Run for Women every year, and that's coming up. They're all over Canada. If you go to runforwomen.ca, you'll see all the different runs that there are. I'm participating virtually this year. It's a virtual run because we can't get together as a group. So we've signed up and we're virtually running with the Ottawa group. So that's excellent. And the group of stores here in Thunder Bay and surrounding area are doing that. And all of the proceeds go towards women's mental health charities. So
super important.
So another great organization.
Awesome.
Something actually I do want to mention as well. I quite regularly get together with a group of guys that are struggling with addiction. If you're somebody that is going through that, just know that we are here to help you out. And if you're ever just feeling lost or dark or confused, send me a message and I'll get you in with us. Basically, we just get together and we'll sit there and I try and help these guys as much as we can. They help me as much as they can. So please reach out if you're in a dark spot right now, because trust me, you're not alone.
And we'll put links to all of this stuff in our show notes when it's all up and ready for you guys to see. Thank you all so much, Aurora, Mark, Ryan. You guys are awesome. I'm so excited for where this is going to go. And I'm going to say goodbye now because I think Mark's going to get beat pretty soon. So, all right. Take care, everybody.
All right, take care.
Stay safe and keep shooting.
Okay.